The magnetic tape spun on the reel, a slow, hypnotic rotation that sliced through the stale air of the basement room. It was a standard-issue FBI recording device, the kind used to catch Soviet spies and labor union traitors. But the voice coming through the speaker wasn't speaking Russian, and it wasn't organizing a strike. It was a low, gravelly baritone, calm and rhythmic, like the sound of tires rolling over gravel. Two men in gray suits stood over the machine. One was a field agent, his tie loosened, a coffee stain on his cuff. The other was a director, a man whose name appeared on the letterhead of the building. They weren't smiling. They weren't celebrating a successful surveillance operation. They were pale. The director's hand hovered over the stop button, his fingers trembling slightly. They had spent 2 years setting up this intercept. They had authorized illegal wiretaps. They had bribed judges for warrants that didn't exist. They had squeezed informants until they broke, all to get this one conversation on tape. They needed the confession that would put the king of Harlem away for life. They needed him to admit to the murders, the heroin, the payoffs. But the voice on the tape wasn't confessing, it was negotiating. And as the reel spun, the realization hit the men in the basement like a bucket of ice water. The man on the tape wasn't the target, he was the hunter. He wasn't talking about his own crimes, he was talking about theirs. The tape hissed. There was the sound of a match being struck, then the exhale of smoke. Then the voice said a name. Not a street name, a real name, the director's name, and then a date, and a hotel room number. The silence in the basement was absolute. The machine whirred, indifferent to the devastation it was recording. The agent looked at the director, waiting for an order to arrest, to raid, to scream. But the director didn't scream. He stared at the spinning reels with the look of a man watching his own house burn down. He reached out, not to turn up the volume, but to the small lever that controlled the erase head. He knew, with a sickening clarity, that this conversation could never leave the room. It couldn't go to the Department of Justice. It couldn't go to the archives. It had to cease to exist. "Burn it," he whispered. "Burn the transcript, melt the tape, and pray to God he didn't make a copy." If you're drawn to the untold power stories of Harlem and the men who ruled without noise, you're already in the right place. This is Bumpy Johnson Files. Subscribe and tell us in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is right now. The official FBI files from the 1960s regarding the surveillance of Harlem's underworld are extensive. They contain thousands of pages of redacted text, grainy surveillance photos, and typed reports on the movements of known associates. But there is a gap, a frantic, illogical gap in the timeline of the autumn of 1963. For 3 weeks, the relentless pressure on the man they called the Godfather of Harlem simply vanished. The tails were called off, the wiretaps went dead, the subpoenas were withdrawn. History books will tell you it was a reallocation of resources. They will say the Bureau got distracted by the rising civil rights movement or the looming chaos of the Kennedy assassination. They are lying. The files on those 3 weeks weren't lost. They were incinerated. The main figure in this story knew something that the most powerful law enforcement agency in the world refused to believe. That in the game of surveillance, the most dangerous person is not the one hiding, but the one who lets you watch. This story will change how you understand the dynamics of power and control. We are taught that the government holds all the cards. We are taught that the badge beats the street. But there is a level of the game where badges don't matter. where the only currency is leverage, and the only law is the law of mutually assured destruction. To understand the conversation, you have to understand the silence that came before it. The man at the center of the storm was tired. He wasn't old, not yet, but his eyes carried the weight of 3 decades of war. He had fought the Dutch, he had fought the Italians, he had fought the police. But this was different. The federal government didn't fight with knuckles or guns. They fought with paper. They fought with time. They were grinding him down, inch by inch, isolating him from his allies, freezing his assets, terrifying his family. He sat in his study on 121st Street, the curtains drawn. He knew the phone was tapped. He knew the car parked across the street had 2 agents in it who wrote down every time he bought a quart of milk. The vulnerability was suffocating. He was a man who valued freedom above all else, and he could feel the walls closing in. He could feel the cold iron of a federal penitentiary waiting for him. But panic is for amateurs. He didn't pace. He didn't shout. He sat and played chess. He looked at the board and he realized that he was playing a losing game. He couldn't outrun the FBI. He couldn't outshoot them. If he played by their rules, the rules of hide and seek, he would eventually be found. So he decided to change the game. He decided to stop hiding. The whispers began in the jazz clubs and the pool halls, small, insignificant rumors. The old man is slipping. The old man is looking to make a deal. The pressure is getting to him. It was a performance, a carefully curated theater of weakness. He let his shoulders slump when he walked outside. He let himself be seen arguing with his lieutenants. He created the image of a king whose crown was heavy, who was looking for a way out. The agents watching him ate it up. They reported back to headquarters that the target was cracking. They smelled blood. They believed that the legendary Bumpy Johnson was finally ready to turn. They believed that with the right push, he would give up everything, the Italians, the corrupt cops, the structure of the entire New York underworld, in exchange for a quiet retirement. The arrogance of the Bureau was their blind spot. They saw a criminal. They didn't see a grand master. They didn't see the man they were hunting was baiting a trap with his own reputation. The tension escalated when a courier was intercepted. A young man, barely 20, caught with a bag of cash and a ledger. The ledger contained names. It looked like a payout list. The feds squeezed the kid. They threatened him with 20 years. The kid broke, or seemed to break. He told them that Bumpy was looking for a sit-down. He told them that Bumpy wanted to talk to the head man of the investigation, alone, no wires, no backup, just a conversation to set the terms of his surrender. It was the breakthrough they had been waiting for. The director in Washington approved it immediately. This was the prize, the chance to personally dismantle the legend. They set the location, a bench in St. Nicholas Park, overlooking the city, public enough to feel safe, private enough to speak treason. The day of the meeting was gray and blustery. The wind whipped the leaves through the park. The agent chosen for the meet was a senior operative, a man who had broken mobsters in Chicago and Detroit. He wore a trench coat and a hat pulled low. He arrived 20 minutes early. His team was positioned on the perimeter, 500 yards out, too far to hear, but close enough to see. He wasn't wearing a wire, that was the condition, but the agent was smarter than that, or so he thought. He had a directional microphone set up in a maintenance van 3 blocks away, A parabolic dish pointed directly at the bench. They would catch every whisper. They would have it all on tape. The king of Harlem arrived on time. He walked slowly, using a cane that he didn't really need. He wore a long wool coat and a fedora. He looked tired. He sat down on the bench, leaving a foot of space between him and the agent. He didn't look at the man. He looked out at the city he ruled, the rows of brownstones, the distant skyline of Midtown. "You came," the agent said. His voice was clipped, professional, laced with superiority. "I'm here," the man replied. "The wind is cold today." "The wind is the least of your problems, Johnson. We have the ledger, we have the courier, we have enough to bury you under the jail until the next century. The only reason you're breathing free air right now is because I want to hear what you have to trade." The man on the bench sighed. He reached into his pocket. The agents in the van 3 blocks away tensed. The snipers on the rooftops adjusted their scopes. But he didn't pull out a gun. He pulled out a bag of peanuts. He cracked one open and threw the shell on the ground. "I don't have anything to trade," he said softly. "I just wanted to ask you a question." "I'm not here for riddles," the agent snapped. "Give me the Genovese connection. Give me the names of the judges on the payroll. Do it now, and maybe we let you keep the house for your wife." "The question," the man continued, ignoring the threat, "is about loyalty. Who are you loyal to, agent? The law, the flag, or the man who signs your checks?" "I'm loyal to the truth," the agent said. "The truth," the man chuckled. It was a dry, hollow sound. "The truth is a funny thing. It changes depending on who's holding the light." The pacing slowed. The wind whistled into the parabolic microphone, making the audio team wince. The conversation wasn't going as planned. The target wasn't begging. He wasn't crying. He was philosophizing. "You have a file on me," the man said, "thick as a Bible. You know where I eat. You know where I sleep. You know what size shoe I wear." "We know everything," the agent confirmed. "But I have a file too," the man said. The agent froze. "What are you talking about?" "I have a file," the man repeated, "on you. Not on the Bureau, on you. On the weekend trips to Atlantic City, on the young lady who isn't your wife, on the debts you ran up at the racetracks in Maryland, debts that were paid off by a certain construction company in Queens, a company owned by the very people you're asking me to rat on." The agent's face went white. The directional microphone picked up the sudden intake of breath. "That's a lie," the agent hissed. "That's a desperate lie from a dying man." "Is it?" the man asked. He reached into his other pocket. This time the movement was slower, deliberate. He pulled out a single photograph. It was small, black and white. He placed it face down on the bench between them. "Turn it over." The agent looked at the photo. He didn't want to touch it, but he had to. He flipped it. The image was grainy but unmistakable. It was the agent shaking hands with a capo from the Gambino family. The timestamp was visible. It was taken 3 days ago. "I didn't take that," the man said, "but I have the negative, and I have the recording of what was said at that table. You see, you've been watching me for 2 years, but who's been watching you?" The twist landed with the weight of a sledgehammer. The feds thought they were the only ones with cameras. They thought they were the only ones with microphones. They forgot that in Harlem, the eyes are everywhere. The waitress at the diner, the doorman at the hotel, the cab driver, they were all part of an invisible army. Bumpy Johnson hadn't just survived surveillance, he had weaponized it. The agent sat paralyzed. The parabolic mic in the van recorded only silence. The agent knew that if this information got out, he wasn't just fired, he was dead. The mob would kill him for being a liability. The FBI would prosecute him to save face. He was trapped. "What do you want?" the agent whispered. The arrogance was gone. He was a small man now, shivering in the cold. "I told you," the man said, cracking another peanut. "I don't want to trade. I want to be left alone. The tail cars, they go away. The wiretaps, they get disconnected. The subpoenas, they get lost in the mail." I can't just stop an investigation," the agent stammered. "You're a resourceful man," the man said. "You'll figure it out. You'll say the intel was bad. You'll say the source was unreliable. You'll burn the files." He stood up. He brushed the peanut shells off his coat. He looked down at the agent, who was still staring at the photograph. "And one more thing," the man said. "That van 3 blocks away, the one with the big ear, tell them the reception is terrible in this park. Tell them all they got was wind." He walked away. He didn't look back. He walked down the stone steps of the park, his cane tapping a steady rhythm on the pavement. He walked back into the heart of Harlem, disappearing into the streets that protected him. The agent sat on the bench for a long time. Then he slowly picked up the photograph and put it in his pocket. He stood up and walked toward the payphone on the corner. He made a call to the van. "Pack it up," he said. "The wind is too loud. We didn't get anything. The equipment malfunctioned." Back in the basement of the FBI building, the reels were stopped. The conversation that had just happened, the threat, the blackmail, the reversal of power, was erased. The tape was demagnetized. The logs were altered. The agent filed a report stating that the meeting was a dead end, that the target was senile and offered no actionable intelligence. For the next 5 years, the pressure on Bumpy Johnson lifted. The relentless federal pursuit softened into a passive observation. The FBI turned its gaze elsewhere. They went after the Italians, they went after the Panthers, but they gave the King of Harlem a wide berth. The legend of the lost tape spread through the underworld, but not the facts. People just knew that Bumpy had sat down with the devil and walked away with his soul intact. It cemented his status not just as a gangster, but as a master strategist. He had proven that intelligence is the ultimate weapon. He showed that if you know enough about your enemy, you don't have to fight them, you just have to hold a mirror up to their face. The philosophical truth of that afternoon in the park echoes through history. We often mistake silence for weakness. We mistake patience for fear. But the man on the bench knew that true control is not about the noise you make, it is about the secrets you hold. It is about knowing that every man, no matter how powerful, has a lock, and if you have the patience and the eyes and the will, you can always find the key. This is Bumpy Johnson Files. Subscribe for the stories history tried to bury.